Sophie Reynolds never expected a Tuesday evening to change everything. The gala had been a last-minute favor for her friend, a glittering event she would have normally avoided. She adjusted her dress nervously, clutching a glass of red wine like it was a lifeline. The room buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and polite conversation. It was all so foreign to her, yet she couldn't deny the excitement that made her heart race. Then she collided with him. Literally. Ethan Blackwell, the billionaire everyone whispered about but few ever met, turned sharply as the red liquid splashed across his crisp white shirt. Sophie gasped, mortified, words tumbling out faster than she could control them. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see." Ethan raised a hand, his dark eyes locking with hers. For a moment, the chaos of the gala faded, leaving only the spark between them. He didn't yell or scoff. Instead, he smiled faintly, amused and intrigued. "It's all right," he said smoothly, and Sophie noticed the calm confidence in his voice, the way he carried himself as if the world bent around him. Without thinking, she reached out instinctively, and he responded with a brief, comforting hug. It was simple, innocent, but it carried a warmth neither of them expected. Something shifted. Sophie felt a strange flutter in her chest, a curiosity she wasn't ready to name. Pulling back, she mumbled another apology and stepped away, telling herself this was just a small accident. Yet as she walked across the ballroom, she felt his gaze on her back, intense and unwavering. Sophie couldn't know that this one night, the spilled wine, the unexpected hug, would mark the beginning of an obsession that neither of them could ignore. Sophie had convinced herself she wouldn't see Ethan Blackwell again. A billionaire's life and hers were worlds apart. Yet fate, or perhaps sheer coincidence, had other plans. A week later, she found herself at a rooftop bar, seeking quiet after a long day. She leaned against the railing, the city lights twinkling like stars, when a familiar voice cut through the evening breeze. "Fancy seeing you here," Ethan said, appearing with a casual grin. Sophie turned, startled, heart racing. He looked effortless in a tailored jacket, yet there was a softness in his gaze that made her pulse quicken. She forced a smile, unsure whether to flee or stay. "Hello," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. They fell into conversation naturally, the kind that surprises you with how easy it is to talk to someone. Words flowed about dreams, frustrations, and life's unexpected turns. Sophie found herself laughing genuinely, a sound that felt foreign yet liberating. Ethan listened, truly listened, and shared pieces of himself in return. A pressure-filled world, expectations he carried silently. When the night grew late, the tension of unspoken emotions lingered. Ethan reached out instinctively, wrapping her in a warm, steady hug. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was grounding, reassuring. Sophie felt her defenses soften, a flicker of trust she hadn't intended to give. Pulling back slightly, she whispered, "I should go." Ethan nodded, but his eyes held a promise she couldn't ignore. "I'll find you again," he said softly, almost as if confessing a secret. As Sophie walked away into the cool night, she couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter wasn't random. One hug, one night, and suddenly the world felt smaller, and the pull between them impossibly stronger. Ethan Blackwell couldn't stop thinking about Sophie. Her laugh, the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about things she loved, even the quick apology she had offered that first night, it all replayed in his mind like a favorite song. He had met countless people in his life, but none had lingered in his thoughts this way. Determined to see her again, Ethan began asking discreet questions, relying on subtle inquiries and his connections. He didn't want to overwhelm her or make her feel trapped. He simply wanted a chance to know her better. His obsession wasn't possessive. It was curiosity, admiration, a yearning to understand the woman who had shaken his carefully controlled world. Meanwhile, Sophie went about her life, completely unaware that someone was searching for her. She had no reason to expect that a stranger, a man whose presence still haunted her thoughts, would become a persistent shadow in her days. She focused on work, on friends, on the ordinary rhythms of life, convincing herself that the magic of the rooftop night was fleeting. Fate, however, had other plans. One rainy afternoon, Sophie ducked into a small bookstore to escape the downpour. As she reached for a book on the top shelf, a familiar voice said, "Sophie?" She froze, heart skipping. Turning slowly, she found Ethan standing there, drenched from the rain but smiling that same magnetic smile. Words failed her for a moment. "Ethan?" she whispered, caught between surprise and something warmer she hadn't expected. He stepped closer, instinctively pulling her into a brief, comforting hug. It was protective, reassuring, and Sophie felt an undeniable warmth that lingered long after they parted. For a moment, the world faded, leaving only the quiet pulse of connection between them. That hug was more than a greeting, it was a reminder that some meetings were never truly accidental, and some connections refused to be ignored. Sophie couldn't believe her luck, or lack thereof. A temporary contract had landed her at a company where Ethan Blackwell was not just a frequent visitor but a major investor. She told herself it was purely professional, that she could maintain her distance. Yet the universe seemed determined to test her resolve. Their first encounter in the office wasn't dramatic, just a polite nod, a casual hello. But the electricity beneath it was unmistakable. Ethan's presence made her heart race, though she fought to appear composed. It wasn't just his looks or wealth, it was the way he seemed to notice her, really notice her, in a way few people ever had. Over the next few days, chance, or Ethan's careful planning, brought them together repeatedly. Meetings, coffee breaks, even the elevator felt like stages for stolen moments. Sophie resisted, reminding herself that she couldn't afford distractions. Yet, one tense morning when a project went wrong and Sophie's frustration threatened to overwhelm her, Ethan was there. Without a word, he wrapped her in a firm, steady hug. Warmth spread through her chest, calming her racing thoughts. She realized, reluctantly, that his support wasn't about control, it was about care. And in that embrace, she felt a safety she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Pulling back slightly, she met his eyes, and for the first time, she wondered if maybe this wasn't just a fleeting connection. Ethan's gaze held patience, respect, and an unspoken promise. He would be there, but only if she wanted him. That day, Sophie walked back to her desk with a fluttering heart, realizing that forced proximity wasn't so bad when it meant being close to someone who seemed intent on understanding her world without trying to take it over. Sophie never liked showing her vulnerable side. Years of independence and self-reliance had taught her that emotions were best kept private. But with Ethan, she felt a curious ease, a sense that she could be seen without judgment. It happened one late evening at the office. Most of the staff had gone home, leaving Sophie and Ethan alone in the softly lit workspace. A complicated report had gone sideways, and Sophie's frustration bubbled over. She let out a long sigh, feeling suddenly exposed. Ethan stepped closer, his presence calm and steady. "Tough day?" he asked quietly, his voice carrying a softness that made her heart skip. "I'm tired," she admitted, surprising herself. "Tired of pretending I can do it all alone." Without hesitation, Ethan opened his arms and Sophie, drawn by a need she hadn't recognized, leaned into his hug. It was warm, grounding, the kind of embrace that whispered, "It's okay. You're not alone." She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, letting herself breathe in a relief she hadn't felt in years. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan offered a reassuring smile. "You don't have to carry everything by yourself, Sophie. Not with me around." Her cheeks warmed, but it wasn't embarrassment, it was trust. In that moment, she realized that hugs could speak louder than words, that the simplest gestures sometimes held the deepest truths. That evening, Sophie left the office with a new awareness. Maybe vulnerability wasn't weakness, and maybe, just maybe, there was someone in the world she could rely on completely. Someone who would respect her, cherish her, and, without pressure, be there when she needed him most. Sophie had begun to notice the small ways Ethan had woven himself into her life. It wasn't dramatic, he didn't make grand gestures or force his presence, but his thoughtfulness and attention left traces she couldn't ignore. A coffee waiting on her desk, a text checking if she had made it home safely, an encouraging smile when she doubted herself, all of it made her pulse quicken in ways she tried to ignore. It was during another charity event that their connection became undeniable. Sophie had attended hesitantly, expecting an uncomfortable evening, but Ethan's presence changed everything. He guided her through the crowd, introducing her to people she might never have met and making her laugh with quiet jokes she couldn't help but enjoy. At one point, Sophie tripped slightly on a decorative step. Ethan caught her immediately, steadying her and wrapping her in a brief hug that was both protective and comforting. She felt her heart lift in a way that scared and thrilled her at the same time. Later, they stood apart from the crowd, watching the city lights shimmer below. Sophie realized she wasn't thinking about the gala anymore. She was thinking about him, about the way he made her feel seen, valued, and safe. Ethan glanced at her and offered a tentative smile. "You're amazing, Sophie. I hope you know that." Her chest tightened, and she returned the smile with a warmth she couldn't hide. She wanted to say something in return, but words felt inadequate. Instead, she let him hug her again, longer this time, and in that embrace, they both silently acknowledged the growing attraction between them. For the first time, Sophie wondered if maybe she had been wrong to think of him as just a fleeting presence in her life. Sophie thought she had a handle on her feelings for Ethan, careful, cautious, but undeniably drawn to him. That was until she saw him from across the street one evening, laughing easily with a woman she didn't recognize. Her stomach twisted, jealousy she hadn't expected bubbling up before she could stop it. For a moment, Sophie felt foolish. She didn't even know the context, yet the sight shook her. She turned on her heel and started walking, trying to calm the rising tide of emotion, but her mind refused to let go. Ethan noticed her almost immediately. He caught up, his expression confused, then concerned. "Sophie, wait." She stopped, unsure if she wanted to hear him out, but curiosity and the unspoken bond between them pulled her back. "Who was she?" she asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. Ethan blinked, surprised. "She's my assistant from another office. We were talking about a project. That's all," he explained patiently. "I promise there's nothing more to it." Sophie studied his face, searching for the truth in his calm eyes. Slowly, the tension between them began to ease. Ethan reached out, and without hesitation, Sophie allowed herself to be enveloped in his hug. It was gentle, reassuring, a silent message that words alone couldn't convey. "I care about you. I'm here for you." She felt her racing heart slow as she rested against him, letting the warmth of the moment replace the sting of doubt. Pulling back slightly, she whispered, "I guess I jumped to conclusions." Ethan smiled softly. "We all do sometimes. That's why hugs exist, to remind us that we're not alone." In that quiet embrace, Sophie realized that trust wasn't about never feeling doubt. It was about being able to return to someone who made you feel safe, again and again. Sophie had grown accustomed to Ethan's quiet presence in her life. He was no longer just the mysterious billionaire she'd met at a gala. He had become a constant, a source of warmth and understanding she hadn't realized she craved. But despite their closeness, neither had admitted what was growing between them. It happened on a late evening walk through the city park. The lights reflected off the wet pavement from an earlier rain, and the air smelled of fresh earth and possibility. Sophie had been talking about her dreams, her fears, and Ethan listened, as always, with patient attentiveness. Finally, he stopped, turning to face her. The intensity in his dark eyes made her heart skip. "Sophie," he said quietly, "I can't keep this inside any longer. I've been searching for you, not just because I couldn't forget that night, but because I care about you more than I've ever cared about anyone." Sophie froze, words caught in her throat. She hadn't expected him to say it so openly, so raw, yet her chest warmed with a thrill of recognition. "Ethan," she began softly. He stepped closer and opened his arms. Without hesitation, Sophie let herself melt into his embrace. The hug was long, steady, and filled with unspoken promises. It spoke of trust, admiration, and a longing that had grown over weeks of shared moments and small gestures. Pulling back just enough to look into her eyes, Ethan whispered, "I don't want to just know you, Sophie. I want to be with you, truly, completely." Her lips curved into a smile she couldn't hide. "I think I've been waiting for you to say that," she admitted. In that quiet moment, embraced beneath the city lights, Sophie understood that some connections couldn't be ignored. Some feelings, once revealed, were impossible to deny. For the first time, Sophie and Ethan felt that their connection was real, tangible, and mutual. Yet life never allowed things to be simple. Rumors circulated about Ethan's personal life, and business complications demanded his constant attention. Sophie found herself caught between trusting him and fearing the intrusion of the outside world into their fragile closeness. One evening, Sophie arrived at his penthouse to find him pacing, a stack of urgent documents scattered across his desk. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by tension, and she felt a pang of worry. "You shouldn't have to see me like this," he said when he noticed her. His eyes softened as they always did when he looked at her. "I want to be here," she replied firmly, stepping closer. "Whatever is going on, you don't have to face it alone." Ethan's shoulders relaxed slightly, and he pulled her into a firm, comforting hug. It was more than a gesture, it was reassurance, a quiet declaration that together they could face anything. Sophie rested her head against his chest, letting the chaos of the outside world melt away for a moment. Over the next few days, they leaned on each other more than ever. Texts of encouragement, short hugs in passing, quiet moments of laughter. They were building a shared rhythm of trust and support. Even when business crises threatened to pull Ethan away, Sophie felt his presence, his care, in every gesture. By the end of the week, Sophie realized that obstacles, no matter how daunting, were easier to face when she had someone who believed in her, supported her, and never let go. Each hug, each shared moment, deepened their bond and reminded her that love wasn't just about passion. It was about steadfastness, understanding, and unwavering care. The city skyline glowed beneath them as Sophie and Ethan walked hand in hand through the quiet park, the night air carrying a sense of peace they both had longed for. After weeks of closeness, misunderstandings, and challenges, they had found their rhythm. Their connection had grown stronger with every shared laugh, every heartfelt conversation, and every hug that said more than words ever could. Stopping beneath a softly lit tree, Ethan turned to Sophie, his eyes full of unwavering certainty. "I don't want to imagine my life without you," he said softly, his voice steady but tender. "I want us, forever." Sophie's chest swelled with emotion. She had spent so long guarding her heart, fearing loss and disappointment, but Ethan had shown her that love could be safe, gentle, and enduring. "I want that too," she whispered, stepping closer. Without another word, they embraced, a hug that seemed to stretch across time itself. It was warm, grounding, and filled with the promises they had made silently over the past weeks: trust, care, and unwavering support. In that moment, nothing else mattered. There were no rumors, no obstacles, no doubts, only the certainty of their hearts beating together. Pulling back slightly, Sophie smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We've finally found each other," she said, her voice soft but full of conviction. Ethan grinned, tucking her hand into his. "And now, nothing can ever let us go." As they walked into the night, hand in hand, Sophie knew that this was just the beginning. A life built on connection, care, and love that would endure forever.